The year is 2025. The world watches as the Indian subcontinent teeters on the brink of disaster. Historical enmity between India and Pakistan has flared up again. The specter of war looms large. This is a stark reality. The possibility of war can no longer be ignored. A recent terror attack in Pahalgam has escalated tensions. India's response was swift, targeting alleged terrorist camps. The situation is incredibly volatile. The international community appeals for restraint. The stakes are high for the entire world. This is the stark reality we face. The serenity of Pahalgam was shattered on that fateful day. A bustling marketplace filled with the sights and sounds of daily life transformed into a scene of unimaginable horror. The terror attack, a grim reminder of the deep-rooted tensions that plagued the region, claimed the lives of men, women and children. The images of the carnage, the cries of the wounded and the stories of loss and devastation served as a stark reminder of the human cost of this unending conflict. India, reeling from the attack, pointed the finger squarely at Pakistan. The Indian government accused Pakistan of harboring and supporting terrorist groups operating from its soil, a charge Pakistan vehemently denied. Amidst mounting public pressure to act, India launched airstrikes against what it claimed were terrorist training camps in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Operation Sindoor, as it was called, marked a significant escalation in the already tense situation. Pakistan, while confirming the Indian airstrikes, downplayed their impact. They claimed to have shot down Indian aircraft and vowed a befitting response. The situation on the ground remained extremely tense, with reports of cross-border shelling and troop movements. The line of control, a de facto border that divides Kashmir between India and Pakistan, once again became a flashpoint. The Pahalgam attack and its aftermath have created a dangerous cycle of violence and retribution. The possibility of this escalating into a full-blown war is a chilling prospect that the world cannot afford to ignore. A full-scale conventional war between India and Pakistan would be a catastrophe of immense proportions. Both countries have significantly modernized their militaries in recent decades, acquiring advanced weaponry and developing sophisticated war-fighting doctrines. The sheer scale of destruction that a conventional war would unleash is difficult to comprehend. Tanks would rumble across the plains of Punjab, their guns blazing. Fighter jets would scream across the skies, engaging in deadly dogfights. Warships would exchange fire in the Arabian Sea, their missiles lighting up the night sky. Millions of soldiers would be locked in a deadly embrace, fighting for every inch of ground. The human cost would be staggering. Millions of civilians caught in the crossfire would be displaced from their homes. Cities would be reduced to rubble. The economic impact would be equally devastating. Trade and commerce would grind to a halt. Essential infrastructure like power grids and transportation networks would be crippled. The war would drain the economies of both countries, pushing them back decades. However, despite the massive military buildup on both sides, a decisive victory for either side is highly unlikely. The geographical realities, the well-matched military capabilities, and the potential for international intervention make a prolonged stalemate the most likely outcome, but even a stalemate would come at an unbearable cost, leaving behind a trail of death, destruction, and bitterness. Looming over this volatile situation is the unthinkable, the specter of nuclear war. Both India and Pakistan possess nuclear arsenals, a dangerous legacy of decades of mistrust and animosity. While both countries maintain a no-first-use policy, the possibility of a nuclear exchange, however remote, cannot be ruled out. The consequences of such an event would be catastrophic, not just for the Indian subcontinent, but for the entire world. Imagine, if you will, the blinding flash of a nuclear detonation. The mushroom cloud, rising high into the atmosphere, carrying with it death and destruction. The blast wave, incinerating everything in its path. The fires, raging out of control, turning cities into infernos. The radiation sickness, a slow and agonizing death sentence for countless victims. A nuclear war between India and Pakistan would result in tens of millions of deaths, instantly wiping out major cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Karachi, and Islamabad. The long-term consequences would be even more dire. The radioactive fallout would contaminate vast areas, rendering them uninhabitable for generations. The nuclear winter, a period of prolonged darkness and cold caused by the dust and smoke blocking out the sun, would disrupt global weather patterns, leading to widespread crop failures and famine. The use of nuclear weapons would be an act of collective suicide, a crime against humanity. It would be the ultimate act of folly with consequences that would reverberate for centuries to come. Section 5. Regional fault lines. The Domino Effect. A war between India and Pakistan would not be confined to the borders of the two countries. It would have a profound impact on the entire South Asian region, a region already grappling with poverty, instability, and political turmoil. The conflict would exacerbate existing tensions and create new ones, setting off a chain reaction with unpredictable consequences. Afghanistan, still struggling to rebuild after decades of war, would be particularly vulnerable. The conflict could spill over its borders, further destabilizing the country and providing fertile ground for terrorist groups like the Taliban and ISIS to flourish. The smaller South Asian nations like Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives would be caught in the crossfire. Their economies, heavily reliant on trade with India and Pakistan, would suffer immensely. The influx of refugees fleeing the conflict would put a strain on their limited resources. The war would also have serious geopolitical ramifications. It would inevitably draw in global powers, each seeking to protect its interests in the region. The United States, China, Russia, and other major players would be forced to take sides, further escalating tensions and increasing the risk of a wider conflagration. Section 6. Economic Cataclysm, a Global Shockwave. The economic fallout of an Indo-Pak War would be felt far beyond the subcontinent, sending shockwaves through the global economy. Both India and Pakistan are major players in the global economy, and their shared economic output represents a significant portion of the world's GDP. A war would bring their economies to a grinding halt, with devastating consequences for their populations and the global market. India, a rising economic powerhouse, would see its remarkable growth trajectory reversed. Its booming IT sector, a major driver of its economy, would be severely impacted. Foreign investment would dry up overnight. The Indian rupee would plummet in value. Pakistan, already facing economic challenges, would be pushed to the brink of collapse. Its industries would be decimated. Its foreign exchange reserves would be depleted. The Pakistani rupee would become practically worthless. The global impact would be equally severe. Supply chains for essential goods, including pharmaceuticals, textiles, and agricultural products, would be disrupted. Oil prices would skyrocket as the conflict choked off supplies from the Middle East. Global financial markets would plunge into chaos. The war would trigger a global recession, the likes of which we haven't seen since the 2008 financial crisis. Millions of people around the world would lose their jobs, their savings, and their livelihoods. Section 7. Diplomatic Upheaval, a Fractured World Order. The geopolitical landscape would be redrawn in the aftermath of an Indo-Pak War. The conflict would shatter the fragile balance of power in South Asia, and have far-reaching consequences for the international order. The war would force countries to choose sides, straining old alliances and forging new ones. The United States, a long-standing ally of Pakistan, would face a particularly difficult dilemma. Its strategic interests in the region, particularly its efforts to counter Chinese influence, would be jeopardized. Its relationship with India, a key partner in its Indo-Pacific strategy, would also be tested. China, with its close ties to Pakistan and its growing rivalry with India, would seek to exploit the situation to its advantage. It would likely provide diplomatic and military support to Pakistan, further escalating tensions with India and the West. Russia, traditionally a close ally of India, would also find itself in a difficult position. Its desire to maintain good relations with both India and Pakistan would be tested. The war would further complicate efforts to resolve the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, where Russia and the West are locked in a proxy war. The international community, already divided and polarized, would struggle to mount a coherent response to the crisis. The United Nations Security Council, paralyzed by the veto power of its permanent members, would be unable to take decisive action. The war would mark a failure of diplomacy on a grand scale, leaving behind a more dangerous and uncertain world. Section 8. The Urgency of Peace, Averting Disaster. The potential consequences of a full-scale war between India and Pakistan are too catastrophic to contemplate. The human suffering, the economic devastation, and the geopolitical instability that would result from such a conflict would be felt across the globe. It is imperative that we do everything in our power to avert this disaster. The international community must act decisively and urgently to de-escalate tensions and bring both sides to the negotiating table. Diplomatic channels must be fully utilized to facilitate dialogue and find a peaceful resolution to the crisis. The United States, China, Russia, and other major powers have a moral obligation to use their influence to prevent this conflict from spiraling out of control. Within India and Pakistan, civil society organizations, peace activists, and ordinary citizens must raise their voices against war and call for a peaceful resolution. The media has a crucial role to play in promoting dialogue and understanding, rather than fanning the flames of hatred and division. Section 9 Conclusion: A Shared Destiny. The future of the Indian subcontinent and indeed the world hangs in the balance. The path we choose now will determine our collective destiny. We can choose the path of war, a path that leads only to destruction and despair, or we can choose the path of peace, a path that requires courage, compassion, and a shared commitment to a better future. The people of India and Pakistan, bound by history, culture, and a shared humanity, deserve a future free from the threat of war. Let us choose wisely. Let us choose peace.